Welcome, everybody. We're at the second of these Eureka presentations. So I'm Vince Barreau, architect with EBSCO. Alexei Kuzmanov is going to do most of the presentation from EPAM. He is the team lead for the Eureka team that developed the work. He's presenting this. So let's start quickly. I'll do a recap and I'll hand it over to him. I'll shoot advance the slides. Okay. All right, so this is the abstract, next one. All right, outline and go on. All right, so Eureka recap. So just to remind everybody, if you haven't, many of you probably attended yesterday's Eureka session, I'll just do a little context for everything. So, Eureka is an alternative platform for Folio that we are building out right now. And we have a number of components being introduced as part of this. And I should go to the next one, the diagram, I think. Yeah, so we have a certain amount of highlights with this. We've got key cloak to do authorization. We have an API gateway, which is Kong gateway being introduced. These are all sort of single responsibility components. And in addition to these off-the-shelf components, we're also providing some what we call manager services as part of the new platform. And this is the context, the subject of today's discussion. And so go to the next slide, just to give you the outline. So we have, as I was saying, a number of new components coming in here. We've got the API gateway. We've got key cloak with authorization, authentication, sidecars in the modules, and application support. This is what we're talking about. So manager services, which are built by the project and allow us to manage all of this new functionality. So Alexei, please take it away.
Yep. So let's start.
Switch slides if you want.
Yep. Let's start our presentation from the overall overview for all of these manager services. So we have three of them. It's manager. Application manager, it's tenant manager, and tenant entitlement manager. The main goal for these services is to replace and have a feature parity for Okapi, not the part of Okapi that's responsible for proxying request, but for that part of Okapi that is responsible for managing tenants, managing modules, discoveries, and all these things. Our main goal here during the development was to make these components, first of all, with single responsibility. They should be easy to use. So let's say our main goal during every sprint, easy API, complex workflows. Yeah, and we are trying to implement it, and I think it was. So let's go through all these responsibilities that manager services covers. First of all, it is a storage of applications. So with Eureka platform, we introduced mention of applications and application descriptors. So application manager responsible for applications. The next very important thing here, okay, we have applications, but how we can and where we can store discoveries, where our modules deployed. One of these components is responsible for discovery information, storing and managing the corresponding Kong entities. Next thing, it is managing tenants. And tenants, they are tightly related with realms and key cloak. To be honest, from our perspective, it's like same entities, but for different purposes. And the main interesting and very complex part, it is an entitling of a particular application for particular tenant or upgrade this application to the newer versions. Previously, we had talked about it like, okay, enabling of modules for tenant. In our platform, we are calling it entitling application to tenant. And for all of our manager services, we are using a pretty standard technology stack. It's Spring, Postgres, OpenAPI, Fein clients, and Kafka. Next. I think you can click just
click.
up. Yep, and first one will be an application manager, and it is an independent service that is responsible for managing application descriptors and discovery information. We can manage this information via regular REST API, so pretty simple. So let's talk a little bit about entities and things that we operate inside of our application manager to have a better understanding of our processes and workflows. First of all, it's applications itself. As you know from previous session, or maybe not, I will repeat it. Application, it is logically grouped list of modules, and we can group them by our preferences, by domain of functionality. These applications can have dependencies on other applications, so we can build a tree of applications. And also, these applications should contain module descriptors or URLs to the module descriptors. So manager application have this functionality that we can specify just a URL where module descriptors stored, and manager application will download these module descriptors automatically. Next part is discovery. It's simple information about module name, module version, and location, where it actually deployed the physical copy of module or service or load balancer. This discovery information is tightly coupled with conch services. So when we are creating a new discovery record inside of our application manager, it will automatically create a corresponding services in Conch. And these services in Conch should have an upstream with information where this particular service deployed. All this should perform automatically, so no manual work with managing Conch or something else. Just a single call to application manager, create discovery, and everything should be in place. Yeah, and another one thing, for discovery information, we know that it can be changed during the, I don't know, performance of environment, or when it works, we should rebuild some modules or build them on other site or other cluster. So you can update a discovery information, and this update will perform a Kafka event that notify all sidecars that information about discovery and module location will change, and it should be processed in runtime without redeployment, any changes, and so on. Also, as I mentioned, it should work automatically without manual managing of Conch and so on. And third, let's say, entity for application manager, it's a bootstrap information. It's a, let's say, system endpoint that provide all necessary information for sidecars to be able to route requests from one sidecar to another sidecar, and it's some kind of mix of information from module descriptor and discovery. So sidecar should know how to route request from one module to another module. For this purpose, we need to know where this particular module is deployed. So let's wrap up these things. And in application manager workflow section, I want to present a pretty simple flow for application manager usage. So we are going to register an application. What should we do? Actually, we should call application manager with post request to application endpoint. Application manager will store module descriptors in database, or if you provided these module descriptors as URLs, application manager will download these module descriptors and store in its own database. Pretty simple operation. Second operation is provide discovery information. For this purpose, we also can call an application manager with post endpoint modules discovery. This simple call will produce next operations. Application manager will store this information in database, but also will create conch services automatically and send a Kafka message that, okay, now you should aware Kafka message to sidecars with a message that, okay, now you should aware of this service. It was deployed. We have discovery for this service. Please store this information for your internal usage. So pretty streamlined thing, application definition. We register it in application manager and conch services will appear. Next one component is our tenant manager. As you see, it's pretty self-explainable. This component is responsible for managing folio tenants and all related information in Keycloak. For folio tenants, we are talking about Keycloak realms. It's a one-to-one representation in Keycloak. So for one tenant, we have one realm in Keycloak. So we can store all authorization and authentication information separately for each tenant without any intersection, pretty secure. For tenant information entity, it's a simple thing, just tenant name and ID. All operations over this entity via API will be synchronized with Keycloak. If you are going to create tenant, the realm should appear in Keycloak. If you are updating tenant, it should be updated in Keycloak, and so on. Tenant and tenant manager have a one-to-one relation with realm in Keycloak, as I said. And also, very important thing here is that we know Keycloak may be pretty tricky to manage and bootstrap, but tenant manager have all necessary bootstrap information for creating realms. And when you're creating a realm via the tenant manager, your realm in Keycloak will be ready to use. Nothing special, nothing. There are no any manual operation for this. Create tenant. You can use this realm in Keycloak, everything in place, all clients, all realm settings, and so on. Okay, and same thing with workflows for tenant manager. For our example, we will use a post tenant endpoint. So when we are calling a post tenant API with simple requests like tenant name, tenant manager will perform several operations. First one, it will be storing the tenant information in database. Second one, creating realm in Keycloak. And third one, bootstrap realm with clients and realm settings. So all necessary information will be in place. Same thing, pretty streamlined, pretty simple. And my favorite, the most favorite component, the most favorite service is Tenant Entitlement Manager. It's a very complex service that depends on application manager and tenant manager. And this service is responsible for doing all things to make your application work, to make your application available for usage. It has the same simple API like tenant entitlement, dash entitlements. Okay, you have all your CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete. But over this simple API, we have a very complex workflows to interact with all external systems and components to make it work. First of all, these entitlements can be asynchronous, and all operations that we are performing performs in parallel if it's possible. Not all operations can be performed in parallel. For example, okay, you need to validate something. We can't in the same time validate sync and installing a module. Yeah. So we have how to say it, flow engine library that handles all this operation in right order, and we can manage and build our custom workflows inside of tenant entitlement. So during this simple operation like entitle, we load information about tenants from Tenant Manager and about application and application descriptors that contains module descriptors from Application Manager. During this the entitlement process, we communicate with Kong, Keycloak, Kafka, and Folio modules directly. So, and on this create entitlement workflow, we will go through all these communications and how it works together. So for doing this entitlement, we should call a post entitlement endpoint. What actually entitlement does? It create the outcome of this call should be enabled modules for particular tenants, but these modules will be enabled in scope of application that we are going to enable, and they should be ready to use. So if entitlement finished, we can start calling modules that are included to the application that we entitled. For some operation things, we provide several query parameters that can change a behavior of this process. First one is async. I think it's self-explainable. We can run this job synchronously and asynchronously. Ignore errors. If true, we do not perform any rollback operation. Yeah, I didn't mention it, but all these entitlement jobs have rollbacks. For example, you are going to install an application and error happens. And we have some trash data in Kong or Keycloak or other services. It can be a problem in future. Without specifying this flag, by default it false, this information will be rolled back step by step in opposite order that we perform. Push on rollback, it relates to Folio modules. If we are trying to install a fresh installation, for example, with some sample or reference data, and we want to push all information in case of some errors or problems, it can be done by specifying this flag, and tenant entitlement service will push all information from the modules database. Tenant parameters, it's the same thing as we have in a copy. For each module, we can specify a list of tenant parameters like sample data or create reference data, something like it. So it supports the same API. Yep.
Sorry. The difference between ignore errors and purge on rollback is that ignore errors has to do with the interaction with Keycloak and Kong, and
Yep.
purge on rollback has to do with the module database itself.
Yes, of course. It's so in a copy we have like push true or false. Yep, and we can specify this flag via tenant parameters as well, push true or false. But for purpose of having some granular things, we can specify this flag separately, like push on rollback, and that means that the module data will be deleted during the rollback operation. And overall rollback operations are, let's say, we can specify this behavior using ignore errors flag.
Thank you.
Okay, so some features for tenant entitlement. We can install or entitle a multiple application at once, even if they have some dependencies between each other. All the things are performed in next way. We have a list of applications that specified in entitlement request. We are building a tree of dependencies between modules and applications layer by layer, and this complex tree preparing an installation order for applications and for modules inside of each application. So you do not need to call several times tenant entitlement service to install the full platform. You can specify one call with tenant name and list of applications, and all work should be done on our backend site in tenant entitlement. Order of installation will be resolved automatically. Order of installation both for applications and for modules inside of this app. And one restriction, we can't, and it's forbidden to install at different versions of the same application. For example, you have an application inventory with version 1.0, and it's already entitled. It works for tenant Diku, for example. You can't install app inventory 1.0.1 for the same tenant. Only one application, one version of application can be entitled for the same tenant. And yeah, let's go. So let's deep dive to all internal communications and order for these operations that tenant entitlement perform. So first of all, during the entitlement process, manager services, it's a part of the stages for installation. We load application and module descriptors from application manager. We validating applications in application manager. So for validation, it's a full list of checks where we perform an interface checks between modules. We perform these checks between different applications in scope of one request. So can we install this defined list of apps or not? We load and discover information from application manager and tenant information from tenant manager. So next stage of this workflow is to communicate to Keycloak and create corresponding resources and scopes for authorization client. And we are using a module descriptors, information from module descriptors to automatically map it and populate information inside the Keycloak. The same thing for Kong. So we are using a module descriptor, information from the module descriptor, because it's already presented, we can reuse it, and populate services with particular roles. So each service in Kong, it's representing a one module, a load balancer of the module, yeah? And during the entitlement operation, we add roles to this service and after this operation, Kong aware, okay, now I can, for mod users, I can route request like dash users with HTTP method create or dash users post and so on. These both operations performs in parallel. They are independent, so we can simultaneously create information inside of Keycloak and in Kong to make it a little bit faster. When all information presented in Keycloak and Kong, and we're sure that everything is okay, the next step is to enable our folio modules performing old and well-known tenant API that have each module on folio. This calls to multiple folio modules performs in parallel as well, but assuming that we have an installation tree and order of installation. So, for example, if mod inventory requires to have a mod inventory storage, first of all, installation layer that contains an inventory storage will be installed, and only after it, the next installation layer that contains next modules will be installed. When everything completed and successful, next step, sending a various of Kafka messages that contains information to notify different modules that something happens. First of all, we are sending a message to sidecars with information about entitlement. sidecar receives this message and, okay, now I'm ready to work with tenant Diku or with tenant Diku2. And after this message, sidecar can successfully route all requests to this module for particular tenant. Next one is a message that contains necessary information, required information for module's keycloak to create capabilities and capability sets. We are getting this information from module descriptors, process it, parse, combine, and send a message to the modules. Next message we are sending to mod users keycloak to create a module users that we right now we can specify inside of module descriptor, specify a system user, we call it module user, with list of required permissions that we should assign to this user. And the last one is send message to mod scheduler to create scheduled jobs using information from the module descriptors. We know that a copy right now have a support of timer API. We can specify some scheduled jobs inside of our module descriptor, and the copy will call this API on this cron timer or how we specify it. We do not have a copy, but we have a mod scheduler, independent module that is responsible exactly for doing these scheduled jobs. For populating this module, we are using Kafka. So when entitlement is successful, we send this information to mod scheduler. And each stage, each operation that described here is stores in database. We log everything. Everything stores in database. Every operation, every communication, all logs stores inside of tenant entitlement. If your job fail or successful, you can reach the API and you will get an exact list of operation in exact order. How manager tenant entitlement calls all these systems like con, keycloak, folio modules, sends Kafka messages, and get logs for each operation independently. So it helps a lot for our DevOps guys to troubleshoot and get information during the tests or installations on so on. It's really easy to, how to say, debug, but not only debug, but retrieve real information about this workflow, how it works, what calls we are doing. Everything stores, everything logs, and we can reach this information pretty easily. The last, but the most important operation, we are saving information to the database. Okay, entitlement is in place. So, a lot of things, as I said, simple API, post-tenant entitlement, a full list of jobs and things that is hidden over this API. To make it more clear, let's go through some diagrams and to visualize all these things. So we have a tenant entitlement right here, and we are going to enable an application. So Entitlement Manager retrieve information from Tenant Manager, from Application Manager, and start performing all these jobs. So a little bit repeat here, but I think you want to. Yeah. Yep. So we have these two operations. After retrieving all information from manager services and validating everything and preparing this list of operations, we create roles in conc and resources in scope in keycloak. These operations are in parallel, and when everything in place, we synchronize all things inside of folio modules, as I said, in mod roles, mod users, and mod scheduler using the Kafka. So it should be aware of these changes of this operation. Next. And if we are putting it all together, yeah, big picture. As I said, simple API, complex workflow. Sorry for this. So when we are going to provision a new environment and make it work from the scratch, what should we do here? Let's repeat all previous operations from all previous manager services. We creating new applications. It's an application descriptors that contains module descriptors inside of our application manager. During this process, we store this information in our database and we create services in Concord. Next step for provision of our Eureka-based environment, we are creating a tenant definition inside of Tenant Manager. It stores information in its own storage and communicate to Keycloak and bootstrap all these things, this realm with clients that should have been to be able to perform next operations. When we have tenant and application descriptors, we can entitle application for particular tenant, and our tenant entitlement service is responsible for doing it. It also communicates with its own database, but as well, it sends requests to Conk for populating roles. It communicates to Keycloak to create resource scopes and sends Kafka messages to module's Keycloak and to the user's Keycloak. After receiving these Kafka messages, module's Keycloak will create corresponding capabilities and capability sets and start provisioning with some roles, resources, and so on. And when we are creating the system users, we are specifying this information inside of module descriptor.
I can wait until you.
Yeah, inside of module descriptor, we are creating an authentication information about this user's key. And yeah, big picture.
So yeah, I think there's just possibly just one missing box, right? Which is that the entitlement manager calls the tenant APIs directly of the Folio modules.
Yes, it's not presented here. It's
right. Got it. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that you had said that earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it should be like Folio module some.
Yeah. So
yeah, and Folio in the tenant API.
Okay, so are they ready for the quiz yet?
Right.
Yeah.
So adding a new another application depending on the newer dependency of some sub application will update this application for all my tenants.
Good question. First of all, we can't update existing applications. So if application is stored inside of application manager, we can create it or delete it. We can't change it. So if you, for example, if you have a new version of this application, yeah, or you should provide some changes, for example, a RISE module version inside of this application, you can specify a new version of the same application that contains a new versions for your modules. After creating this app, you can send a push request to manager tenant entitlement, its service, and specify this new version of your app. Entitlement manager will find already installed or entitled version of this app, find a differences between two applications, and will perform exactly the same list of operation that we perform for create, but for new modules, for new versions. So you are no need. So there are no need to, let's say, update apps here. Every application, how to say, a snapshot of information So when you specify, for example, application inventory with version 1.0, it means that every time you will reach the application manager to get information, it will return exact same list of modules with exact same list of versions for these modules and application descriptors.
I do have to correct myself. I was thinking about depending on the different module version. Like having a second application that depends on a slightly higher semantic version of like users app because there's one new entry in my users or something. And how would this play out? Basically, like how would a module be updated if a different application requires the same module?
I think I can take that one. So whenever you make a change in a module, you need to release that module and then make a new release of the application as well. And applications have dependencies on other applications. So if there's a breaking compatibility change that you just incorporated, that needs to be accounted for in the dependent applications as well.
I was thinking about a non-breaking change, like it's just a semantic version, like a patch or maybe.
So if it's a non-breaking change, then the dependencies will still be satisfied. You just need to update, like Alexa was just describing, that application. Deploy the new, register the new version of the application, and then interact with the entitlement manager to update it.
So I know that we sort of made this decision that that modules can't be repeated between applications, but presumably that doesn't hold for version, right? Like you can have version 1.01 and 1.02 that have almost all the same module IDs, except for one that has a bug.
We can specify the one module in two different applications. So module can be part only of one application.
Right, but it could be part of, say, two versions, right? Like let's say.
Yes, it can be part of two versions.
Thank you.
So you can have multiple versions of the same application that contains maybe same modules or different modules, it doesn't matter. But you can specify this module in another one application.
So you mean you can have one tenant with the old version of the application and another tenant with the new version of the same?
Technically, it's possible.
Okay.
Technically, it's possible.
You mentioned the complexity of the system a few times. How does it compare with Okapi's complexity?
I can't answer like you want because I did not dig to the copy very well, but I know that we did, and it was not so easy to, let's say, make all these things in parallel, but think between each other and store the right state, handle all possible errors, communication errors, networking problems, and make it stable and workable. It was not so easy. So if we will try to perform all this operation manually, for example, we can just call to the tenant API of our modules, and modules will be installed. Yeah. But specifying these things in Keycloak, in Kong, in all other things manually will be a big job here. But everything is automated right now, so.
I can maybe speak a little bit because I know Okapi very well. The complexity that Alexei is showing here is right, like the operator complexity of this is much less than the operator complexity of an Okapi-based system. This is nice and simple. You have, these 4 operations that you need to do. I mean, this is like as an operator, this is much less complex. The workflows are more complex because they're doing more things.
Yeah, we have, let's say, independent gateway con, so we should manage information, create roles, create services. We have independent authorization and authentication and authorization provider as Keycloak that manage resources, scopes, roles, policies, everything, yeah, everything that relates to security covered by Kickwork, and we should manage it and bootstrap it. So we can do it. And in a copy-based platform installation, we just do not have this component. So
Yeah, so possibly it's more, it has a higher total complexity, but that complexity is more distributed with Eureka.
In a copy, you have all in once. Yeah. A copy again has these routing capabilities, security capabilities, but it does it understood by you. The same thing here. Eureka Folio does it for you, and you only call this foreign points. You have all it.
Mhm. Yeah, it performs the same operations as a copy, internally complex at the same level. But keep in mind, this is also doing more things, right? This is introducing roles, this is introducing application support and management of those. It's introducing asynchronous capabilities with Kafka as well.
Yeah, rollback
And rollback.
and more visibility into the state of your execution, your asynchronous jobs, and all that stuff. So it's more feature rich in that regard.
I have a question about interface dependency resolution. And at what point, for example, could I compose an application that was not valid in terms of interface dependencies, or would the application manager reject it? You know what I mean?
yeah, you can specify an application as you want inside of application manager, but during the entitlement, it will perform this validation check based on list of applications that you are going to install. For example, as a single app, it can be not valid. For example, it requires something from inventory, from users, like it, but you can specify this application. And if you are going to install it in scope of a chunk of this app that contains application users, application inventory, it will be a 100% valid app. Why not? It depends on context that are going to ensure.
So is there an endpoint? So the validation
Yes.
is part of the application manager, right?
Yeah.
And is there an endpoint that?
Yes.
Okay.
Application validate.
Perfect. Okay, so like if you're trying to compose the system, you don't have to wait until you try to
Yes.
make it work for you.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You can close this API. We specify a list of apps, and it said, okay, it's valid, or not, it's not valid, and you are missing these interfaces. Please specify.
How is this dependency resolution done? Like with the layers? Is there some case I can get it to run into a loop?
If you will specify as, let's say, if you will specify circular dependency between modules, for example, module inventory requires inventory storage, and inventory storage requires inventory, when you will start doing this loop, it will validate that, okay, we have a circular dependency, it's not valid, sorry.
I think a question or two have come in on the chat.
Oh, yes, let's see if we got some chats. Chat. Okay. Here. Questions. So, what is off user in the diagram on the slide? Folio Eureka based provisioning. How are realms built? Is it everything from resources, scopes, roles, policies, and what auth users is?
So I can take the first part of it. So auth users are essentially a user record in Key. And I'll cover this in a lot more detail in the session immediately after this one. But we call them auth users to sort of keep them distinct from users in Folios so that you don't get them confused.
Yeah, we are still using mod users, and all personal data information still stores in mod users. But in Kickwork, if we are going to authenticate this user and perform some actions, we should have a possibility to authenticate and authorize call from this user. So inside of Kickwork, we store username, password, and always our data. Resources, scope, roles, policies. So it will be also, I believe, a part of your correct session.
Yep.
So resources and scopes, it's a representation of capability inside of key flow, so composition of it. And roles, it's one mention with modules key flow, and with capabilities we have an possibility to role-based access to our resources. And I think that's it.
Okay, next slide. You want to do the next one or?
Yep.
Or 5 minutes?
And we have some extra. During the multiple tests and deployments and managing these things locally and on different environments, we faced with some operations that can be, let's say, it will be nice if we have these tools. Yeah? And I want to present several tools that we have here. First tool, it is an application builder UI tool. It's a very simple UI application based on React, where you can start building your application. And it's performed pretty the same interface dependency check. So you can load existing JSON file with application descriptor, or you can create a new one, let's say specify an application name, and start adding modules. By modules, I talk about module descriptors. Yeah, it's pretty nice and easy to use on UI without all this big, I don't know, JSONs with all data. You can just pick up, okay, I need more users in my application, I need more users here, and it will highlight what interface is required by this application and what interfaces it provides. So pretty nice and easy to use. Second one, yeah, it's an application descriptor generation tool, mostly used by DevOps guys to automate a process of how to say provisioning of this environment. For example, we have a snapshot version of modules and snapshot version of applications, and we have to build on a nightly basis this environment each time. Who will be responsible for generating this app descriptor with new versions of modules? Not good manual work. So we created a manual plugin that allows us to specify a template, for example, with latest version, most users latest, most user B latest, and by calling this manual performing this manual job like manual clean install, the outcome of this job will be well-prepared applications that can be used for your provisioning. So I know that DevOps guys have some Jenkins scripts that automated this process, and okay, I need a new environment, new application, it's ready. And the last thing, and it's application descriptor validation tool. With introduction of capabilities and capability sets, we are strongly rely on permission naming inside of module descriptors. And we know that not all of them are good for you. So to be able somehow test your module descriptors and to prevent you from adding new permissions that are not very good for our capabilities, let's say, you can add this mailing plugin to your regular module build, and all the things will be automated, like another one, link check, yeah, okay, module descriptor is valid, okay, everything is okay. Or sorry, you have some problems in naming or permission usage, like one permission used to protect multiple endpoints. It's not very good, not very secure. So please check it and somehow resolve these problems. So yeah, there are 3 links there, so you can reach them after the presentation and check how it works.
Oh, we can take questions now.
Yeah.
I think we're done with questions.
Thank you for your attention.